people bring their games, we look at their games. That's cool. Anybody want to be first victim? Step forward. Yeah? All right. Let's see what we got. Wow, you're an active player. Okay, so E4, E6. The French is really popular around here, huh? I think I've seen like 10 games today, 5 were like French. C3, knight f6. What was that? Oh.
Yeah, D5, like the D5.
Oh, my bad. So D5, knight C3, knight F6. Bishop G5. Bishop E7. You don't like the bishop B4 line?
Well, at different times, yeah.
Man, like when I used to play the French, I used to love playing this bishop B4 stuff. Like all the, but the king F8 line, you know?
Yeah.
Not the G6 one. I saw some Korchnoi games and I was just like blown away. I'm like, how to, like, he just takes the attack and then just wins the end game.
Right.
All right. So E5, knight D7. You're not scared of the H4 stuff and all? Do you take the pawn?
Do I take it?
Yeah, like after H4?
No.
Oh, okay, I see. Smart man. So, but he didn't do that. He just traded. By the way, what I'm talking about is this is a move that a world champion named Alekhine kind of made popular, and it involves just sacrificing this pawn here on G5, and in exchange, what White gets is some very interesting pressure along the H file, and usually this queen will get kicked out, and White's pieces have a lot of space on the king side just to put pressure, especially on this pawn on G7. And in the meantime, all of Black's pieces are completely undeveloped. So it's a very tricky opening, and throughout the years, there's been a lot of theory developed. So that's why I was asking him, where he gets the courage. But you don't take the pawn.
No, I wouldn't take it.
So what do? After H4?
Yeah, like John Nunn versus Yasser Serouan, 1989, like the King's Team Championship.
With H4?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Interesting.
H5.
I don't know. I guess every time I looked at it, it's like everybody plays H4 and they take everything.
Yeah, it's pretty good. You can play it.
Excellent. So, Queen H5. It's kind of unusual. The queen's just coming out and the king's not even on the king side yet. Did you castle king side?
Yeah.
Yeah. I would have tried to, I don't know, done something psychological, like try to castle queen side and be like, look where you put your queen, Here we go, castle. Yeah, see, like, for example, what I would want to do is usually play C5, but here I think I might run into some trouble after knight B5, which is, I think, kind of a typical idea that White has in these setups.
D6 looks really weak.
Yeah, so I mean, if you take on D4, then I have this knight D6 check, and that doesn't look very pretty. So keeping that in mind, what I was thinking, since I don't want to castle yet, I'm not saying the castling is bad, I'm just saying, I'm thinking out loud, like if I just looked at this position and someone played Queen H5, I'd be like, I'm not going to castle kingside. So a move that would come to my mind would be A6, which, spoiler alert, is planning C5. And all I want to do is just prevent this knight from coming to B5. So that's one idea, but I'm sure this is fine. So bishop D3. H6. You felt safe?
Yeah.
Yeah? And you just played this game, so it's all fresh in your mind. Just trying to Yeah, I was looking at f5. I'm not sure if that would be like a good move. Because if your opponent doesn't take this pawn en passant, then it looks like you've closed down the king side and you're ready to play c5.
Right. If he does take it, I guess you take with the knight.
Yeah, I would take with the knight. And I think French players aren't usually too scared of this backward pawn. As long as you have this bishop, you can defend it pretty easily. And what feels nice about this is that I'm winning a tempo over this queen that came out so early.
Right.
So I feel like I'm doing something right, you know, like I'm punishing someone that's trying to violate my dear classical principles. So let's go back here. So h6. As long as you don't play this move, I'm happy. F4. And then you went knight c6 without c5. Because you're going to get knight b4.
Correct.
Interesting. And there's nothing he can do about that. See, I mean, in the French defense, I'm usually thinking that black is always going to play c5 and try to put pressure on d4. So when I see a move like knight c6, I get worried. Because if I don't get something real against d4, white is going to have all the time in the world to just start storming my king side. So if against the move, he played knight f3. Black has this very timely move, knight b4, which, if you didn't have knight b4, I would be very critical of knight c6, right? Because, I mean, you're blocking...
Yeah, I wanted to get knight b4 and then push c5.
Yeah, okay, so that's very nice. And if you can get rid of this bishop, then that's a huge accomplishment. Yeah. So knight c6 looks like a very interesting move. I paused a minute because I was trying to find something to give you a hard time. Maybe I could castle that way against knight b4, and I could move the bishop away. But you always have c5, so it seems to work out just fine. So knight b4. Castles. And c5. Yeah, and actually I think I've seen quite a few games where black doesn't really take on d4, he just plays c4. And then, you know, you just swing everything over. So g4, f6. What's the idea behind f6?
Well, really, I think I should have taken the bishop first. The idea is to break up the center, open it up, and get all my pieces active.
I'm just afraid that it's just going to enable white to open up the king side.
Well, the idea behind f6 was to stop g5.
Okay.
Because he just played g4, right?
He did just play g4, yeah. So, I mean, the first thing I would do is I would chop this guy down.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think I should have taken the
Yeah,
first.
because I know this guy's going to go.
Correct.
Because that's the whole idea of knight b4. So, I think he would take with the rook. Would make sense, right?
Right.
And now maybe I could start winning some tempos. So rook d2 probably. And you're saying that now g5 was a move you were having trouble with?
Right, because I didn't want the whole king side to blow open without being able to get like more like the rook active, the knight active, you know. I felt like my pieces were trapped over on the queen side, and it was going to bust open the king side.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty accurate evaluation,
Yeah, so
because
I felt like I had to do something quick to alleviate some pressure on the king side.
this position looks really bad to me for black
Right.
already. So this is leading me to question the whole maybe quick castling with h6, because if this pawn was on h7, I don't know if I would be that worried, because g5 isn't really going to do anything. But now all of a sudden, this contact point is giving you all sorts of trouble. And I don't see any counterplay for black.
I think the knight's on b4.
Yeah, it is on b4. Sorry. So now I can understand a little bit better.
Yeah, that's going to stop g5. I think that has to be booked.
Yeah, I think you're right. And also, I think your judgment is probably correct.
Although, like I said, I would have rather taken the bishop first with check.
Wait, you think because there might be some bishop g6?
Just because the bishop might get in.
Okay. All right, but here he played g5 and you took it, so it really didn't make a difference. Oops. So f takes. Well, at least now you're getting the f file for your rook. But this just seems like it's going to be a chronic problem. I mean, yeah, okay. So you played rook f5. I don't know. From a practical point of view, I think queen f7 looks interesting. Did you see anything that kind of?
I originally pushing that pawn.
Yeah, I mean that's a very French state of mind. When you see this, you just want to put a bishop here.
Yeah, exactly.
You might even be in denial that it's just never going to happen, you know, because for that to happen, you would need this, and somehow this. And even if that happened, it's not clear like who's better here. But yeah, sometimes you got to weigh what you want with what you need here, and I think you just need to get the queens off. I mean, unless there's something really direct that I'm missing, I would just try to trade queens. And white has to be careful, because if he thinks he has all the time in the world, you also have some counterplay here based on taking on d4 and taking on e5.
Right.
So rook f5, h4, c takes. And rook e5.
Yeah, now right there, I thought about, hard to see from before.
So he played rook g1.
Would you say knight e5?
Yeah, instead of rook.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of. Instead of rook takes, knight takes. I thought about that.
And this thing?
And then takes.
And d5?
No, take the rook.
Oh, it's check, right, of course. Oh, I see it. Okay, let me.
That's the line I was thinking.
I just kept thinking the king was still on b1.
No.
Okay. All right, let's look at this line first. Well, sorry. Take on d3. And now take on f5, right? So if I take on d5, you have some interesting checks there. Yeah. And if I take here, you want to play check and take, or what happens if I take?
Yeah, see, this is where I don't think I could find a good continuation.
Yeah, and actually I mean, earlier we were talking about domination and how it's just limiting the scope of your enemy's pieces or your opponent's pieces. So I keep thinking that against takes there might be some queen e3 stuff, and against knight takes d5 there might be some queen c5. So I was just looking at this move king d2. which has its idea. Mainly, I was looking at what would happen if d4, then rook e1, and if takes, pawn takes, and now I was kind of missed bishop e6 because I thought, if you move the queen, then I just play rook e8, and it looks like checkmate almost.
Yeah.
But almost doesn't cut it. So king d2 is just delirium. It looks like an interesting position. I'm just a little bit concerned that this bishop's not coming out yet. But
Yeah, because it's blocked behind its own pawn.
yeah, so
Rook's still sitting over on a1. He just seems like he has more activity than I do.
yeah, I mean, there seem to be two moves to consider: g takes and knight takes d5. If knight takes, though, check, king b1. So if queen takes, queen check, king h7, g6 checkmate. It's kind of cool. But I don't think you need to do that to yourself. Maybe you can just go bishop e6. And this position is a total mess. But I don't know, I just have a gut feeling that white has to be doing okay. Has to be doing more than okay. I don't know, there's just moves like knight f6 floating around. I'm not sure what to make of them. Even probably a move like knight f4 might be okay. Just threatening the bishop and putting the knight on a good square. Yeah, because I don't think there's any captures on a2 that I need to worry about. So okay, so maybe your fear here is justified because this position looks forced and it doesn't look so hot for black. So you took with the rook on e5, right? So rook takes instead of knight takes e5. Rook g1. I don't know, it also seems like your opponent's it's not really getting this queen out of the way to open up the g file. Like, he's taking too long. Again, maybe a move I would consider would be queen f7. I don't know if it works here though. I mean, there's like a whole bunch of other stuff going on now. Oh, you got your move in, huh? The knight f8. I bet that felt good.
Moral victory.
Yeah, exactly. Queen g4. Okay, now we're talking. Knight g6. What's going on? What happens if it takes? You went knight f3. What's wrong with this move? Am I doing this right?
The king's still on c1. Part of it.
Okay, still. Because this is what happened in the game, I think. He played knight f3. But this move begs the question. There doesn't seem to be a good way to defend. Oh, my mistake. Sorry. So against queen g4, you took on g5 before you played.
Right. Yeah. I was going to say there weren't two pawns.
Yeah.
Yeah, close
Yeah, my mistake. Yeah, that makes a lot more sense.
Right.
So now knight g6. That looks nicer now.
I was like, did I really?
Just scaring you. So knight h4. Knight e5. Knight take. Oh, so, right. You can't take here? You're going to get mated on the h file?
I could take there, but I felt like if I just took off this.
Yeah, so knight e5. Knight takes. Knight d3 check. Now at least you're winning a tempo on the queen as opposed to those other lines where the queen was on h5. Yeah, and you don't have to deal with the g takes h6 stuff, so yeah, this is a much better version. And you're up a pawn, right? Nice.
Yeah, I'm up a pawn.
Nice. Queen d4. Oh. Now you're golden. Now it's smooth sailing now. You got your pieces out, you're up a pawn, c-file is open. Nice, yeah, I think, yeah, you were probably feeling pretty good now, huh? Okay. Yeah, this is always a bad sign when you need to be attacking and you have to play like king d1. b6. Oops. Yeah, you still have to be careful though. I mean, you have no control over dark squares, and your king is a little bit smothered here. But okay, it doesn't look like there's anything really problematic. Yeah, I really like where you positioned your rook.
Right.
First of all, because not only are you giving a nice escape route for your king, you know, in case you need it, which wouldn't be ideal, you know, if you have to start doing this, but you're also putting pressure on g6, and last but not least, you're also preparing to advance this f-pawn. So I think rook f8, rook f6 is a really nice defensive maneuver, just because it does so much, you know, at once. And usually, I think that's the trademark of, you know, a good move or just a good idea in general. If you can do several things at the same time, then you're being very efficient with your moves. So after rook f6, here. Yeah, it's very nice. So it reminds me of some of those Korchnoi games in the McCutcheon where, you know, this queen just gets in and you end up doing something like that. Okay. d4. Oh. Man, that turned around pretty quick. Now all of a sudden, this bishop's a beast. And it's game over almost, right? He has to go knight c1. Wait, no. Oh, he played knight f4. Ooh. I mean, he's either got to play b3 or knight c1, right? I would think that the problem with knight c1 maybe is that now you can play this f4 move. I don't know, that's one idea. Unless there's like a queen h3 or something really dangerous. But if I can just get this f-pawn rolling, I'd be feeling pretty good. I mean, I feel pretty good already, but what was your general idea here?
That was the idea, to get the f-pawn.
Oh, okay, yeah. I mean, that makes sense. The only thing I'd be concerned about is a move like queen h3, just so I don't get mated.
Right.
But I don't think there's any need.
I think my queen can always come back to defense.
Yeah, right? I mean, I'm looking at a couple moves. I was looking at queen f5,
Right.
or maybe just queen c6. I like queen c6 because queen f5 doesn't really, change anything. We're all just shuffling back and forth. And I still have to deal with the mate threats. So queen c6 I like because, again, it's a dominating move. I'm just covering the squares that you want to get to. A move like queen f5 just delays the same question because after queen f3 we still have to deal with the same problem, just on a different square. So this nips it right in the bud. Just want to make sure I'm not missing like mate in 2 or something, because that would be embarrassing. Okay. Yeah, I mean, there's no way for the queen to get to the e file. Maybe a move like, I don't know, queen h2. Just anticipating if you go f3, then queen b8 is going to end up being checkmate. So maybe something like that. I don't know. All right. But definitely, I mean, knight c1 seems to be the key move, or the only move. b3 is probably worse because you actually want to clear up the e file for the rook. So, yeah, so this is bad news. Me too. Look at this. Totally redeeming for the French bishop. Everybody says that bishop is bad. Checkmate. In your face. Society. Yeah. No, I think that was a very interesting game. I mean, you have to be cold-blooded to handle those positions. I don't think I can do it. But I do think something went wrong in that opening for you because that position looked way too scary. I don't know if I would criticize castling. I'm not crazy about h6. I think maybe f5. And already just start trying to bring your pieces over to the king side, because if takes, then knight takes f6 and you're starting to win tempos on the queen. And maybe you can get this knight c6, bishop d7, e8 stuff going a little bit quicker, because as it happened in the game, I mean, all of White's play was already rolling, and all you had was this knight b4 stuff, and it was like, well, that's not going to be enough. But it worked out. So, okay, interesting game. This is Mike's. I don't know if we should look at it while he's not here, though. We're doing it behind his back. Oh, you can see it later. Okay, Mike from the future. Okay. Okay, so Mike is white, and Ben Feingold is black. So d4, knight f6. Oh, look at that. I can sense the fear. It's like this is the. I have a feeling this is as far as this pawn is going to go for a while. I'm going to play it close to the chest. So Mike is playing white, and black is Ben Feingold. So takes. Actually, I just saw a game. A friend of mine, grandmaster from Paraguay. He's like 20 years old, and he's been winning like every tournament in Europe recently, and his rating is skyrocketing. His name is Axel Bachmann, and the main idea of the Tromposky is that White wants to double up these pawns and have all these types of positions with better pawn structure, and it's for a long time it was just considered that after bishop takes f6, these positions are unpleasant for black, or either e takes or g takes. But I saw this guy play g takes and win a really nice game against one of these Hungarian 2700s, Richard Rapport. I think he was playing in the U.S. a while ago. So this is really making me question the validity of this assumption that, you know, if you let black take on f6, I mean, if you let white take on f6, that things are so easy. So I think the c5 move goes along those lines, because after bishop takes, g takes, we get a similar idea, except that there's a pawn on c5 instead of d5. So after, oh, actually the pawn did go to d5. Nice. Now queen b6. Usually when white takes on f6, the general strategy is to keep all your pawns on dark squares, because you just lost your dark square bishop, so you need to make up for it by just putting as many pawns on dark squares as possible. Usually that means putting, you know, pawn on c3, on e3, and many times the light square bishop gets developed through g2. So this is very consistent with your general strategy of putting as many pawns in dark squares as you can. That way you won't really miss it that much. And all the while, it's not clear what black is going to do about his king, because if he castles kingside, well, now the weakening of the pawn structure is really, really obvious. This queen can very easily come to h5. Knight can come to e2 and f4. But theory says that d5 is the main move. So after queen b6, b3. I think most people play queen c1. And I remember Shirov playing this with black, and of course Shirov, being not that he is, just plays like bishop h6. So if you take the bishop, I take the pawn, and we have, you know, some crazy tactics going on. Of course, white can just go e3 and the game goes on. But b3 is a move that worries me a little bit, not because it's, you know, a bad move in itself, but because black is really kind of poking at white and making him do things he doesn't really want to do. Because before we were looking at where all our pawns should be going, and now it's like they're going in the opposite places. And it's happening almost, you know, so slowly that you can't really notice it, because it's being, I guess that's what GMs usually do, you know, they make you do things and you don't really realize that they're doing it. And here I'm starting to notice one of those things, because I would not want to put my pawns on light squares. So f5. And I think this is why, because now this bishop is going to come to g7, and this whole diagonal is going to be a mess. c3, okay, makes sense. e3. a6. Yeah, obviously black had to get creative developing this knight, because if you go to d7 right away, you have some problems defending f5. So in any case, I think c7 is a really good square for the knight, because it puts pressure on d5, and it also prepares this move e6 when the time is right. So black is also getting ready to put some serious pressure on white's center. So knight f4. Bishop e5. I think black is anticipating some possible knight h5 stuff, and as well threatening to take on f4 and then take on d5. So queen to h5, and he chopped it down. And he took on d5. Yeah, so if black can just take on d5 without any serious consequences, then this queen h5 move really wasn't a good idea. Probably the right thing to do here would be to defend the pawn on d5 somehow. And I'm sure there's a way. I mean, I would think about a move like queen f3 maybe. The problem is I can never really finish my development, especially with this knight on b1, because whenever I move this knight, then my pawn on c3 is going to be hanging. That's why it's so important to have kept the pawn on b2. Otherwise, I might have to do something like, geez, I don't know, like bishop c2. That way if bishop takes, pawn takes, now the queen is defending d5. And maybe I can prepare something like queen d2, and then maybe knight a3, knight c4. Just holding all the pieces together. Barely, but at least holding. After queen h5, I think white's position finally collapses. Takes. Knight takes d5. Bishop c4, bishop e6. Yeah, I think white just missed that after bishop e6, there's really no pressure on f7, and now the knight can move to either f6 or just stay on d5. And black is just up a pawn and is ahead in development too. I mean, and actually, it's white that has all the pawn weaknesses. That shouldn't happen, the Trompowsky. So, ooh, he took here. That's not good. Now he gets his pawn back, but this pawn is gone now. Yeah, I'm not convinced this is a good pawn trade, just because this pawn structure is much worse than this one, by the simple fact that now there's nobody to defend these isolated pawns, particularly the pawn on f4 with moves like g3, that would at least keep everything in one pawn island. I think I would have just preferred to keep my pawn on g2 and allow black to keep his pawn on f5 and just defend g2. How? That is a good question. Maybe I can castle, but then moves like rook g8 are kind of troubling, but okay. I think I can deal with this. So now I'm actually threatening to take on f5. I'm also considering playing c4 and knight c3, and there's some coherence to white's setup. And if rook g8, I'm not really that worried, because if I'm not mistaken, I can just go g3. And sure, my light squares aren't pretty, but hey, life's not perfect. But now I'm threatening 2 pawns instead of 1. And again, c4, knight c3, if I can get the knight to d5 and block this diagonal, I don't know if white has that much to worry about. So after queen f5, bishop g2. Rook g1, queen c6. Queen d5. Yeah, obviously if black is able to trade queens, the pawn structure greatly favors him, so hopefully Mike didn't trade on d5. Come on, Mike. Oh, nice. Queen g4. I was terrified. Uh-oh. Rook d1. Oh, this is kind of funny. So, why can't he just castle instead of playing rook d1? Is this funny? Maybe not. Because it seems more natural to castle, right? I mean, you don't want to leave your king in the center like that. Yeah, that's what I was looking at. But I think knight takes e4 might not be terrible. Because after queen takes, I can just play rook e1. And all of a sudden, there's like stuff that doesn't look too hot. I would be a little bit scared if I was black here. But I think black has, I don't know if this is what Ben had in mind. But after castles, I'm thinking black has this move first. And obviously the idea is that if you go to a random square, then queen d3 is much, much stronger now. So knight e4 doesn't do anything, and queen c2 seems like a good move. So you probably have to go somewhere along the third rank.
Like queen g7, you can just sack both your rooks.
Can I get away with that? Are you that cool that you can get away with that?
I hope so.
Yeah? So against queen d3, here. What now, hot shot? You could do that. But then just rook takes, and you take, and then just go knight g3. I'm still in the game. But I think after queen takes knight, you still got everything you want, right?
I can't see the board.
You still got everything you want, right? Like after queen takes.
That's clear.
Yeah, it works. It looks like it works. But probably queen g3 or queen f3, I don't know. It should be the same, but queen g3 looks like the more natural move. But I think then you can just go queen d3, and black wanted to trade queens anyway, so now black just gets that endgame he wanted before. And rook he1 doesn't seem like a big deal anymore. You can probably just get away with going here. And black's just a pawn up, right? Yeah. So this is here. So you play rook d1 instead of castling. The only problem is now you never have rook e1. Oh, so you just went bishop c2. Okay, so rook d1 was a bad move because now you can't even keep your rook on d1. So after rook c1, bishop f5. Wait. Oh, castle. Mike forgot to put the second zero, the third zero. Okay. Yeah, and this looks over. This is not a good setup. And black king is safe. I mean, you're getting killed on light squares. You can't take on e7 because of the pin on the e file. I think this game is pretty much over. So, rook g3. Oh, he took on g3. Oof. So check. Nice. Queen h5. All right, so now white's just going to lose another pawn, and his king is still exposed. I think. Oh, he didn't even take the pawn. Interesting. He just went check instead. King d2. Oh, so this was his idea. Now d5, and the d file is going to open up. Ben's so good. I would have just taken the pawn and been like, hey. d4, King c1, d3. Yeah, that's not good. So rook d2. What is this? d6? That's not a move.
B6 maybe?
That doesn't make sense though. Why would you play b6 here? You know? It says d6. Oh, rook d6 maybe. But I'm not sure that makes a lot of sense either. At first I thought he had queen e1, but then I guess queen d1 is the only move, otherwise queen takes c3. The funny thing is, afterwards it says white played king g2, which I mean doesn't resonate so well with the position. Let's see what else is. Oh, then a6, and then king to r3. And he sunk his battleship. So, all right, it's lost anyway. So, I think that'll be it for this game.